This week on Catholic Pour Over.
Recently, you were in a cameo of a pretty popular documentary on Netflix.
It's kind of funny how when all of that happened, back then it was kind of not a big, in some regards it was a big deal, but it just kind of lost notoriety pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But now, especially as it's been on Netflix, like I just spent almost 3 weeks as the #1 movie on Netflix.
We're so happy to have Father Joe Mamich on Catholic Pour Over today. Father Joe and I go back a long way, Maria. I don't know if I told you this story, but when I was a senior at Borromeo College, Father Joe wasn't Father Joe yet. I was just Damian and he was just Joe. And he was a freshman at Borromeo Seminary. And the one thing I remember about him, in addition to being a very good man, was that he had a police scanner in his room. And he was very interested in what was going on in the world of law enforcement. And that never left him.
I know it didn't.
And so we have Father Joe on today, who serves as the chaplain to the Strongsville Police Department and the Strongsville Fire Department, and has served the Stowe Police Department. And in addition to being ordained in 2006,
You got it. Yeah.
He's been involved in a police and fire chaplaincy for a good part of his priesthood. So, Father Joe, welcome to Catholic Pour Over.
Thank you, Father Damian. It's great to be here with you. And you're right. It's probably about 13 or 14 years I've been doing chaplaincy in one place or another.
So to hear that you had that while you were in the seminary, did you discern between two, or did you think about going into police or fire?
That's a very good question. Actually, the answer to that is yes. I thought about doing all sorts of things, and everything I thought about doing, though, had something to do with helping people. So in the end, when I ended up being asked to be a chaplain when I was in Stowe, it was very much like, it's kind of the blending of both worlds.
Yeah, that's great. So explain to us what it means to be a chaplain to fire and police.
So one of the things we talk a lot about in the church, and I think Father Damian certainly would know this with the time he worked in seminary formation, and I think you'd experience this too in lay ecclesial ministry formation, is the importance of being present and like a ministry of presence. So at its root, being a chaplain is about being present. So it's being present to the police officers, the firefighters, first and foremost. Then by extension, because you're spending time with them, or I do a lot of ride-alongs with both the police department and the fire department. I do think the fire department has better food and they cook better. But the time that I spend with them is oftentimes so I get to know them and be present to them to help them in times of need, to help them if they need a listening voice, a kind ear, just kind of another perspective on things. But by extension also then like the citizens, because sometimes I've been called upon to talk to citizens, to relate to somebody with an accident scene or a fire scene, things like that. But I think the biggest thing is just being present, being a kind voice and a listening ear.
You're not the only priest in the diocese who does this kind of work. I know Father Doug Brown does
with
it.
the City of Cleveland Police
Father
and Fire.
Matt Byrne.
Correct, yeah.
And
it's about a dozen of us.
That's great.
There's about a dozen of us throughout the area. I think Cleveland obviously has a whole cadre of them, and Father Brown would be the Cleveland Police and Cleveland Fire Chaplain from the Catholic side of things. Matt Byrne, like you said. So we've got small, medium, and large cities that have chaplains, yeah.
So when it comes to police and fire, these individuals are seeing traumatic events often. In a sense, their life, you never know. You pull someone over, you never know what's going to happen. You get an emergency call. It's high intensity stuff. So how does your work assist that? And how is your work maybe different from someone who is a therapist who has to work with individuals who are seeing this kind of thing all the time? Because I imagine it can wear on you over time.
Yeah, that's actually a really perceptive question. There's, particularly since COVID, in the safety force, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion about mental health resources, and kind of all things like that. And they do see a lot. And it's a very high intensity thing because it's always going from one thing to the next. And what seems to be, as they'll often say, particularly both the fire department and the police department will say that, what seems to be the most routine calls can sometimes end up going most sideways and most quickly. And so I think probably one of the big differences between like a therapist is the fact that a lot of therapists don't have the firsthand experience in so much as doing the ride-alongs or building that rapport because they've been present in that situation. And in some ways, while I'm not in every situation, I think I've seen a lot of things that kind of help to be they don't have to explain all the backstory. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of times firemen and police officers will find maybe difficult because they don't want to share things with their family because they don't want to drag their family into some of the things they've seen or some of the things they've experienced because you have to give all the backstory. Where for me, they can just start the story and I gotcha, I figure out what you mean like that. But I think there's also kind of an emerging set of therapists that do specialize in working with PTSD and kind of even secondary trauma that comes up from those type of calls.
So is chaplaincy at the request of the department or like how do certain departments or cities have chaplains and others don't?
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
Oftentimes it depends on department. Like the cities I've been involved with, both in Stowe and then in Strongsville, were really receptive to that. One of the parishioners when I was at Holy Family in Stowe, he was the sergeant in charge of the chaplaincy program, and I was one of two chaplains. I was like the junior chaplain there, and he just approached me and asked if I would do that.
Oh, that's great.
Similarly, in Strongsville, actually the city I grew up in, and the safety director for the city was a parishioner at St. Joe's, and he asked me too. He's like, "Would you consider doing this?" I said, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." But there are some cities where I actually remember being on a scene once where a neighboring chief said, "Father, I wish we could have you, but my city's not into this." Now, interesting enough, over the course of the last couple of years, that city's ended up getting some.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a spiritual thirst for sure that's present, and people need assistance, whether they know it or not at the time. So right now you're wearing your priest clothes, your Roman collar, your clerics, as am I. When you're on the job as a chaplain, do you wear this? Do you wear something else? Do you ever have to wear a bulletproof vest? Are you ever armed?
All good questions. So let me get to that by going to the little funny backstory. So I had never done fire chaplaincy before, and when I was invited to be the chaplain for the Strongsville Fire Department as well as the police department, I said, "Yeah, I'll learn. I'll be happy to do that." So my first fire department ride along, I go out on a call dressed like this, and the patient had been unconscious. When the person came to, I didn't know this, but they were one of my parishioners. They saw me and about passed right back out again. And the fire captain later on said, "Padre, we're going to have to do something different because," and I wish I would have thought about it, but like 10 minutes later, he's like, "You're the priest, not the Grim Reaper." And like, that's true. So unfortunately, that was a little bit of a shock because up to that point, anytime I'd been with the police department, I always wore this.
Yep.
And in Stowe, I wore this. And at that time, we had under vests, but I would always wear a vest when I was with
What's
the
an
police
undervest?
department. So it would be the bulletproof vest that goes underneath your shirt.
Oh, okay.
Strongsville has outer carriers now. So I actually do wear this, but I wear a vest over this. So the collar will be underneath it, and then the bulletproof vest, which has got a badge. The funny thing they always say, too, is the word chaplain looks like captain. So they kind of often think you're in trouble. You're in charge. And I'm like, no. I'm just the chaplain. Now, if you look closely, I've been standing with officers before on scenes, and people have said, "Why do you have a cross on your badge?" Because my badge has this. It says City of Strongsville Police Department Chaplain. It's got a cross in the middle as opposed to like the state seal.
Sure.
And I'm like, "Well, I'm the chaplain." "Oh, who died?" Like that's how quickly they kind of changed. Like, "Why are you here?" Like how? And they said, "No, I'm here because I'm right with the officers. I'm here to support the officers, and I'm here to be out in the community." On the fire department side, I actually do wear a. They have uniform shirts that are like polos. So It has a Maltese cross on one side, which is part of the fire department logo or patch. I mean, and then the other side just says chaplain. But I do have for fire scenes, I do have a helmet that says Strongsville Chaplain's got crosses on it, and a coat, obviously a fire coat. I got a city radio, which I like. It's actually an upgraded version of the police scanner because it actually can work. I can talk on it, I can use it, and I can listen to everything that other people can't listen to. It's an official radio.
And if you hear something, might you say, "I'm going to go on the scene for this"? It would be good for the chaplain to be there.
Yeah, like actually, just a couple months ago, there was unfortunately murder-suicide in Strongsville on Halloween night, and I had just settled in at the rectory to watch a movie, and I had the radio on because I knew it was Halloween night, and people get into antics on Halloween night. And when I heard that call come out, I said, "Yeah, I think I probably should go." So I got in the car, went down there, and ended up spending a good 5 or 6 hours between the police department and some of the family members that day.
And my guess is most of I don't know most, but not all of the police and fire that you serve are Catholic. What do they think of having a Catholic chaplain? And have you broken down any stereotypes or made any headway with bringing people to the Lord, or at least helping them understand Catholicism a little better?
Absolutely. And I certainly don't say that to be like prideful or anything like that. But I would say that much like the military, much like I even think the medical profession, but particularly even the safety forces, it's a culture. It's a group of people who are pretty guarded, and they don't necessarily want to let their guard down. So it takes time for them to accept you. And I knew that in Stowe. They said, hey, it's going to take time for the guys and the gals to get used to you. Just ride it out, see what happens. So similarly in Strongsville, like when I started, it takes time. Everybody's a little guarded, trying to figure out exactly why you're here, what's going on. And it'll even be said, like some of the guys I'm the closest to, my buddy Matt, like obviously like one of my closest, my best friend, like a brother to me. And initially they always laugh, like he's like, well, why does the priest have to be around us? And now we're inseparable. And the guys will know that. And in some regards, they'll even say too, like, when you first came around, people are trying to figure out, who are you? What you're about? Are you going to be too Jesus on us? The whole 9 yards. And now they're you're just yourself. You become one of the guys. And undoubtedly, like they'll even say, like, there's not one person on either department that wouldn't want you around. And there are people who I would say would be atheists. There would be people who would be agnostic. And a lot of that isn't, I don't think it's necessarily for any reason, but perhaps some of their own experience of pain and suffering in their lives. And they trying to put that together. But yeah, no, it takes time to get in there. But I think if you'd ask anyone, one of the funniest things for at least like the fire department is many people don't know, but they have to shop every day. They have to pay for their own food. They have to cook their own meals, all that kind of stuff. It's not city funded. They throw into the kitty there, and I can't pay. And most of the shifts, I'm like, here, if money's no good, like they won't take my money anymore. Initially, they took all my money. Now they don't want my money.
That's beautiful. So you become part of their community and their team. And then on the flip side, do you help when they have to go deliver news to families? And how is that experience?
Yeah, I think one of the downsides to the job really does become what we would call in the business death notifications. And death notifications can be very, very difficult because you're going to enter into somebody's life to deliver perhaps the worst news you could ever think of delivering, with no background, no understanding, and no rapport. And you have to do it in a way that you got to get it out quickly because they have some sort of a sense something's wrong when the priest and the cop show up. When the guy shows up wearing this with a cop, they're like, this is never a good thing. So I've had the unfortunate opportunity to deliver death notifications, or even sometimes to have to make those calls on the phone, which is really not all the best at all because you really want to deliver that stuff in person, but sometimes there's no other option.
Yeah. And so do you deliver the news sometimes, or you're there to help support them?
It depends on how we do it. We kind of go, I've done it both directions. Sometimes I lead, sometimes the officer leads. We always usually kind of figure that out as we go. Like, okay, well, who's going to lead this, and go from there. So I've been in situations where it's been both. Yeah.
So recently you were in a cameo of a pretty popular documentary on Netflix, and I live in Strongsville, and I remember this incident happening with the crash in Strongsville, and my husband, daughter, and I are sitting there watching it, and I'm like, this scene comes up, I'm like, I think that's Father Joe, and then I hear you speak, I'm like, that's Father Joe, and just then, like, my mind was blown, like, oh, that's what it means for him to be a chaplain, and like, I knew you were, but it didn't seem real, or the depth of it till I saw that, and just the gravity of it, and what you...
Yeah,
additionally, you do to even shepherding a parish.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in that because it's kind of funny how when all of that happened, back then it was kind of not a big. In some regards, it was a big deal, but it just kind of lost notoriety pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But now, especially as it's been on Netflix, like I just spent almost 3 weeks as the #1 movie on Netflix, and a lot of people in our parish, people would come up to me, "Can I have your autograph?" I mean, even conversations at a lunch table would be like, "Yeah," like because I think it seems like I don't want to say it seems like it's fun and games until it's not.
Yeah.
But then in reality, when that happened, you're like, okay, there's a depth to this that I wasn't cognizant of, wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are going to be difficult moments, and and of course everybody thinks they know how it should be delivered and what the way the best to do it, and it's tough because I mean you have grown people who just get so overcome by the depth of emotion. And one of the neat things about that too is like one of the things that a chaplain's not supposed to be is you're not supposed to really become like, I'm not their priest, although in one of those cases I was, because I ended up having the funeral for one of the victims. And actually 10 years earlier, there was a teenager girl that was killed in Strongsville, a 16-year-old. I had her funeral too. She was a parishioner, but I had to do the death notification. The family was right there on scene, which was really kind of multi-layered things going all over the place. But you want to try to connect them back to something. And a lot of times people have family members or they have a church or something that you can connect them to, but sometimes they don't. And then you kind of have to play that by ear and navigate through that.
I think it's such a beautiful ministry because it's so incarnational. And I'm even thinking about the fact that you put on their uniform. You're a priest, but you put on their uniform and you enter in with them. So you don't stay at a distance and say, I'll be over here and you firefighters and police officers here. I'm with you. I do ride-alongs. And then it's in building up the rapport and it's building up the trust. And of course, that's what every priest ought to be doing. You're never far from the flock that's been entrusted to you, walking with, celebrating with, grieving with, always with, like God with us. And so I'm wondering, even with some of the firefighters and police officers who may struggle with belief or maybe agnostic or atheist or not Catholic, still appreciating the fact Father Joe's with us and he's one of us and he's not leaving us. And I think that's just a great witness to priesthood.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's a great witness to priesthood, and it's also a great witness to really what we should be doing as priests, as far as wherever our flock is, trying to be a part of that and connecting with them. And I would say that's you actually asked a question a little earlier, like, am I ever armed? The answer is no. Chaplains are never armed, provided that they are civilians. So technically, I'm a civilian. I'm a civilian member of each department, but some departments have chaplains who are officers. They would be armed at that case because they're still a police officer. But you're right, just being present, just being in the mix of all of them. And there are times, like sometimes, you're like, hey, hold this, carry this, grab this, that kind of thing. They're part of it. I mean, I've had some, another difficult moment that I've had as a chaplain was once I was riding with the cops and there was a drug overdose right in the midst of that whole period of time when there was a lot of overdoses going on. And for 2 minutes, we were the only two people in that house. And so the officer's doing CPR. I'm trying to keep the family quiet. That seemed like the longest 2 minutes ever.
Bet.
And, he's sitting there on the ground doing compressions and everything like that. The family's obviously overcome with emotion. And you're like, where's everybody? And then when you look at it later on, you're like, that was only 2 minutes. Like, that was a crazy 2 minutes.
So as much as you give in being a chaplain and knowing that there are other priest chaplains in our diocese, how do you receive support for what you experience?
That's good. I think that's a very good question. As Father Damian I would know, and I'm sure you know too, the importance of spiritual direction, the importance of having trusted confidants. In some ways, like I alluded to, my best friend's one of our firemen, and he's been a great source of support. There's a lot of guys that I've become close to in the department who we regularly talk outside of quote work and things like that. So just kind of having that shared experience, I think, helps a lot. But I also think, and Father Damian mentioned the whole thing about incarnation, that a lot of times when I'm either saying Mass or I'm doing Liturgy of the Hours or I'm in private prayer, some of those things are kind of replaying through your head and you're kind of praying and almost playing through both of those situations and keeping those in prayer, keeping them close to your heart and interceding to the Lord with those things.
There's a known relationship between the black and the blue, they say, between priests and fire and police. And I'm thinking that one of the sufferings is because of a few bad members of the police department or the priesthood, that sometimes all priests or all police get tagged that you're this or you're that. How do you think we ought to work through that? Is that just something that we have to accept, or like we were both ordained after the O2 abuse scandal. There have been some bad cops, there have been bad firemen, there are bad businessmen, there's bad doctors, there's all this. But sometimes the label comes upon priests and fire and police. So how do you navigate those waters? especially since you're three of them.
Yeah, no kidding. One of it's kind of funny that I never really thought much about that black and blue relationship until it was a hot summer day in August of 2008, actually. It's funny, I remember all this very vividly. The now police chief in Stowe, Heather Prussia, she mentioned to me, we were doing a ride along. She was a patrol officer at the time. She's like, Father, I think that priests and cops are a lot alike. I'm like, what? And so she kind of expounded. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. And so you're right. And I think we are a lot alike. A lot of individual labels get taken to the whole group. And it goes back to something, actually, I think we both would have heard from Bishop Hill, I think, during the time when we were in the seminary, of what's your experience. Yes, everybody might have this experience, and all priests or all cops, all firemen are this, but what's your experience? So if you talk to your experience and you let your experience kind of lead, it realizes that while there are bad, most are good. Most are simply trying to do the right thing, trying to be the best they can, trying to be the best cop, best priest, best firefighter, best EMS worker, whatever the case might be. But yeah, there's some times where there are going to be bad apples. So just speak to your experience, and that's what's been one of the neatest things about. I was thinking of this on my way over this morning, is the fact that I've been with Strongsville for a little over 11 years, and we had a firefighters ball back in March, and they were doing like years of service anniversaries, and I'm like, I've been here more than like half this department. Like, how did that happen already? And then even there's a whole bunch of new police officers. But in some ways, because of the guys and the gals' experience with me, before I meet the new people, they know who I am, because they're like, hey, we got this chaplain running around. And one of the coolest things is actually he's now one of our sergeants on the police department. When he was sworn in as a new cop, right after his swearing in, he's like, are you the Father Joe that was at Holy Family? Well, here he was a 7th grader at Holy Family when I was a young priest. I'm like, and now you're driving me around with a gun. I'm like, look at that.
Gosh.
So, yeah, kind of cool.
Wow. That's almost like a full circle moment there.
Full circle.
Like, yeah.
I'm a little older than he was at the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm a little older though.
I want to ask one more question. So you work with police officers and firefighters on the reg, as the kids say, regularly.
Mm-hmm.
What would be something that our listeners and our viewers would be able to pray for them that you would think would be helpful? What do they need for intercessory prayer?
It's a very good question. Wisdom and courage or strength. I'm not sure which one of those would be because I think so often they find themselves having to make split-second decisions. And in those split-second decisions that they have to make, in some cases, they're matters of life and death. And that happens with the firefighters if they're administering meds, if they're trying to evacuate somebody out of a building. Happens with a police officer trying to diffuse a situation. And then I think the courage and the strength is to continue to serve with that. Actually, most 9/11s, since I've been the chaplain, I've been always offering the benediction at our city's 9/11 ceremony. And that's actually one of the things I think I ask for in that benediction oftentimes, is that they might serve with wisdom and courage. Because I think that's needed.
That's great.
That's needed, yeah.
Well, good. Well, we promise to pray for you too, Father Joe,
Thank
and
you.
all your chaplaincy work, and all the chaplains, especially here in the Diocese of Cleveland. So thanks for coming on, and we'll see you all next time on Catholic Pour Over.